I'm Ashley Godwin, joined by Mr. Blake Tierney and Director Joan Adcock. You both are running for position 10 at-large City Director for Little Rock, Arkansas. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to get right into it, and we're going to have introductions. First, I'm going to start off with Director Adcock, the longest-serving director for Little Rock. Describe in your 30-plus years some of your most notable achievements.
Okay. As she said, my name is Joan Adcock. I've been elected for 32 years. I started out in a clothing business. I had Youngland Children's Store for 30 years. And then I decided I wanted to, with the help of Bill Clinton and the federal government, I wanted to help with welfare to work. I took 1,500 women off of welfare, 51 men, not that we didn't like men, but that women had the responsibility of the children, and the men was not raising the children. So I did that for 14 years, and during that same time, I became a city director. I ran for city board. There was 11 in my race, and my thing was I was from Southwest Little Rock. Southwest Little Rock was given by the Pulaski County judge to the city of Little Rock, and we felt like that we wasn't being heard. And so I ran for the board. As I said, there was 11 people running in that race, a little more than today. And I won. The race was over with at 2 o'clock on Wednesday morning. So I have been on the city board, but in working with, I know some people say, I'm old. Let's talk about that. Running for the city board, I had the Hope Center, and working with that population of women on welfare, from very poor homes usually, and not much structure. I became mama to those women, and that's what they called me. In fact, it happened all the time that my phone would ring and I would say, my daughter would answer and she'd say hello, and they'd say, let me speak to mama. And she would explain, mama's not here, and I would take the phone. And though also, they had lots of children. And those children, when they was at the Hope Center and everything, called me grandma. So today I am mama and grandma to lots of people in this city, and I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of my record of working with people that felt like they didn't have a voice. I've always wanted to be the voice for the person who doesn't have one. And that's what we find with Little Rock. So many times people have problems and they need some help, but they don't know where to go. And that's where my phone calls come in mostly. It's from people needing help and needing to know how to get it from the city. We have lots of programs available that people get help from, but some people can't find it. I worked with the land bank. That was when we had so much property that we just didn't know what we was going to do with it. It was vacant, it was burning and everything. Myra Jones, who was a state representative, and we flew to Flint, Michigan, and there we learned what a land bank was, and we brought it back to Little Rock. And out of the land bank also came rental inspection. Today, what we called rental inspection back then is now renter's rights. It's just got a little polish on it and a new name, but it is what we sought out, renter's rights. And we was having a lot of good progress with that until the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, that kind of changed everything in this world. So now we've got it polished off and everything, and it's renter's rights. I also founded the Animal Village. You all have done lots of stories on the Animal Village. In fact, when the cat was still alive, Joey, you was out there quite a bit, and we appreciated it. The village now has had a new polished job put on it, and it for this year, we have so far caught 3,900 cats and dogs and took them to the village. And I'm very proud of that. If you see my billboards, you see my dog on the billboard, and she is also from the Animal Village. We have got problems in the city, and I think that with my experience, with owning a store for 30 years, I had to know how to do a budget, how to live within a budget. And so I am a person that likes to take the budget and really examine it and see how we need to do on it. Sometimes things need to be cut, sometimes things need to be increased. But having the knowledge that I have in all walks of life and everything. I think that I'm the best person for the position to be reelected for position 10.
Mr. Tierney, you have said in your campaign, we need a fresh perspective. Describe yourself and what you would bring if you would be elected to this position.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. So this is home for me. I grew up north of the river with my family, went to school over there, went to Hendrix College, and then came back and served in the city of Little Rock. This is somewhere that I have given a lot of myself in service. That's where I started my career in nonprofit world and in public service, was at our house, serving families there, and then helping recruit and mentor AmeriCorps members who are serving the whole population of our house. I also helped start the Mercy Community Church of Little Rock, helped reinvigorate the multi-faith youth group of Arkansas, and led that for a few years, and then did other things while I was in the city of Little Rock, working and serving. I moved away for about 5 years. I got my master's degree in public service from Marquette University, where I learned how to bring groups in government together to be more impactful on a lot of the issues that we have in our society and in our cities. I saw that especially in the sphere of our unhoused population in the city before I left. And when I moved back, I wanted to move back home, specifically to live in downtown Little Rock. I wanted to be back here where I'd given myself, and I wanted to bring what I learned back to the city. And what I saw was that there needs to be a fresh, new leadership that knows how to bring groups together, that knows how to build collaborations, to be data informed, and to be effective at getting results, not just with government agencies like I have, with city, county, and state, but also with the nonprofits and ministries that make up the fabric of our community. I've been able to do that. And when I moved back, I jumped right back into service. I'm part of the Age Friendly Little Rock Commission. I helped start the Queer Collective, which supports LGBTQ families and other folks. And this is what I want to do, is to give back to the community with all the expertise and passion and compassion that I have. And so for me, that means that we can focus in on things that haven't changed. We have a lot of issues in the city, just as Director mentioned, and a lot of those haven't been moving. There's been stagnation in the city, and we need to be focused on our growth and our future, and not only on making the city a place that is safe for everybody, but it's somewhere that people want to be a place they call home for themselves, for their families, for their businesses. And that's what I bring to the city. When we look at the record of Director Adcock, there's many things that the director has done, but it's also time for new leadership, especially given some of the votes that she's made. One of those things was a vote against a solar energy project. That's going to save, voting against a project that's going to save the city $1 million annually. That's taxpayer money that Director Adcock said we don't need to invest in saving. And that is also just going to help power city operations. But that's one example of many different votes that are not looking towards the future of the city and what is going to help everyday people. And it's not being proactive and preventative. That's what I bring to the city, this city race, the city campaign, is that view towards how can we be preventative, proactive, collaborative, data-informed, effective. I have the experience to do that. I know I'm going to focus in especially on public safety, making sure that every street is safe. And there's a wide breadth of things that we can do better in the city around code enforcement, our overstretched police force, and our traffic, our streets that are unsafe for so many people. We can do better about revitalizing our neighborhoods and our downtown, especially all the abandoned and vacant properties that we have in the city. These can be places that are for housing and small businesses and community gathering spaces. Right now we've had many of those that have been around for decades. I've talked with a friend who was looking at a house that they grew across the street from that's been there since he was a kid, that's been abandoned. And that's unacceptable that we've had that issue there for that long. And we need somebody that's going to take action on it and again, jump in not just with small actions to get the city moving on a particular part of the city, but that's going to help the whole city. As an at-large director, be representing the entire city, especially those that have been historically disinvested from, such as Southwest Little Rock, John Barrow Road, 12th Street Corridor, South End. That's what I bring to the table as city director, is that kind of leadership that's going to be focused on that. And finally, focusing in on jumpstarting our small businesses. I've heard so many stories about small businesses that have struggled to work with the city through getting licensing, permits, the fees. We need to make that easier, especially for our Spanish-speaking business owners. It takes them 3-4 times longer to go through the process of becoming a business, which turns a lot of people away from going through the right process to become an official business. And we need to make that easier for people. So that's what I bring to the table. That leadership, that collaboration, data-informed, effective experience in the field, working with all these levels of government, and one that's going to focus in on revitalizing our neighborhoods and downtown, jumpstarting small businesses, and making every street safe.
Director Adcock, I'll let you respond to his claim about your vote for solar energy.
Oh, solar energy? It was not something that we had presentations about. It was something that came up at a meeting. I felt like the city was not ready for that because we needed more input into it by others than to just somebody coming up there and saying, hey, we need this. And I think that it's something that even today it has not really got started. I think that we need to have more information on the board level, more information to the people. And like everything else, everything has to put the cost of something in priority. What's the most important? Is that more important than garbage trucks or fire cars or police cruisers and everything? I think that lots of times when a person has to vote no, it's because there's other priorities that need to be more. And another thing that he said was something about working with the Latino community. And I think it was 2007, the police chief then, Chief Buckner, asked me what I knew about the Latino community, and I said that most of them live in Southwest Little Rock, but actually not that much more. And so he said, we're having a problem. When these men go home from the store, where they've gone and bought groceries or bought something with a wad of money, and people see that, they follow them home, they knock them over the head. And so one police officer and I was given the task of walking Baseline and Guyver Springs, and in every store window putting in Spanish, telling the Latino people that we needed them to come to a meeting. And we had a packed house that night. And we started what is called Working Together in the Community. And it was where we started an ID program. And all this, I chaired the whole thing. We took 1 year and putting together, Working Together in the Community. We did an ID for the Latino people. We also looked at their housing and other issues. And that is how we started the work with the Latinos in Little Rock.
I'm going to move on now. Crime in Little Rock has been a big issue for people living here and working here. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Tierney. I looked at your campaign materials and your website. You said, quote, you want to relieve an overburdened police force. What does that look like if you were elected?
Yeah, so we have a lot of vacancies in the police department right now, and there are many things that contribute to that. Part of it is that the police officers are retiring faster than are joining the police force. We also have lower recruitment numbers. We also, police are doing a lot of different things that don't necessarily require police presence. And so I'll get into each of those, starting backwards actually. So for one, we have police officers that are responding to unhoused folks in the city, and mental health and substance use calls. We have, gratefully, a co-responder model with a social worker and a police officer, but we can do more to make sure that police don't have to respond to those calls for unhoused people. Oftentimes, it's just pushing unhoused folks in different directions. From one business, they'll go down to another one if they get called. So we can be smarter about those kinds of calls and making sure that unhoused folks get the services they need and get a response that is going to change where they are and their experience. And that's going to make sure that the police aren't stretched as thin doing things that they don't need to be doing. Secondly, the job of police officers is really difficult. They've experienced so much. They work really long hours. They experience violence. They get threats. We have to do better about making sure that our officers are taken care of. That means focusing in on their benefits. I talked with a police officer who was saying, in part, that after a certain range of time in a term of service as a police officer, you don't get any more salary increases. And that's one reason why we're seeing retirements that are early. Another is that we need to take care of their mental health, making sure that protects not only the police officer, it helps them be more retained, but it also makes sure that everybody is safe whenever they have interactions with police. And then finally, we can do better about benefits for not only our police, but all of our first responders, because we've seen first responders in the fire department and 911 that are struggling to get those numbers in of people hired and applications. One of those is we do have this sign-on bonus, but as I heard from police officers, a lot of them are getting poached by other cities. They'll go through our training, but then another city will say, well, we'll pay that sign-on bonus if you'll come to us. So we're wasting those resources on that training because another city is going to take them. But instead, we can focus in on benefits like childcare. Childcare is often a barrier for a lot of people to enter the workforce or to join, especially a job like being a first responder. And so that's one part of safety. But safety includes so much else. There's so many different pieces that contribute to people feeling safe in our city, people feeling like they're living somewhere where they want their family to be outside and to grow up. That means making sure that we have our code enforcement that is fully staffed and that is responsive. We have a lot of apartment complexes and other rental properties that are not safe for a lot of people, whether those are out-of-state property owners that are abusing our residents, or business owners that just are struggling to make ends meet. But that comes around to unsafe places for the residents to live, but also for the neighborhood. It drives down property values and makes people feel unsafe in the city, and oftentimes leads to real life acts of unsafety. We see that with our vacant abandoned properties, whether they become fire hazards or they become hotspots for crime. We need to do more about addressing those. When it comes to things like rental properties, that means that we need to take an aggressive approach to really addressing it. Director Adcock voted against, there was only no vote against the Renters' Rights Ordinance that was in June. And that means that if that hadn't passed, we wouldn't have had the tools to take out liens on these properties to start addressing the problems that exist. That ordinance added another tool to our tool belt, and Director Adcock voted against it and said that we didn't need that. We can do better about, like I said, code enforcement and making it a strategic response. I've talked with many residents who've had the issue of calling into code enforcement and getting bounced over to zoning and then to public works and not really having the right door to come in. We need to have a no wrong door approach so that when people are asking for help from the city, they get that help. They don't have to go through a director or anybody else. If they need it, then we'll be available. But we need to make it so that the people of Little Rock have access to the solutions that they are so much seeking. And in addition, being strategic means when we have out-of-state property owners, whether that's abandoned properties or rental units, we need to be aggressive on that, whether it's the liens or with the courts or whatever it might be, we need to address it. And then we need to, there are folks that are just trying, like I said, to make ends meet. They have a home that's been in their family for years, and they just don't have the money to make repairs. How do we have a different response to that? That's part of what it means to be strategic about our code compliance and having that different approach. But all of this goes into safety as well. And so that's what I'm talking about when I bring this up.
Director Adcock, do you want to respond about your vote?
Yes, there was a couple of things that he said that was incorrect, and I want to correct those. One, he said that we wasn't getting the applicant. Well, let me go a little bit further back. I serve on the Civil Service Commission as the liaison from the city board. I was called by some people that they had been suspended, and they were suspended with pay, but their case had never been heard by the Civil Service Commission. Some of these was 3 to 5 years, meaning people were sitting at home being paid by the city and their case was not being heard. My first thing was, why not? And the why not was because the members of that commission was not attending the meetings. They would get there, staff would get there, and maybe one would show up and maybe two. But they had to have 3 to have a quorum. So I contacted Greater Little Rock leadership because we advised that there was a civil position on that commission that was empty, and they re-advertised it with Greater Little Rock leadership. And we had 9 people apply. And since we have filled that commission now with these new people, we have never not had a quorum. So that is one reason the case is just set up there. Another thing that was mentioned was that we had the police and the mental health. We started out with 3 officers in mental health, and one of the reasons was that we was having to send 2 people to homes where you had a family fight, and you had 2 officers. By having the mental health person, we have 1 officer at that home, and it is much more cost effective to send in 1. Also, the fact that we are now going to add some more and hopefully come up with 8. Another item, he said that I said, which I never said this, that we did not need the rental inspection. I did not vote for this one because it was just a mirror of what we had done years earlier, which was called rental inspection. This was written by one city director, and they had no input from the rest of the directors. They had no input from the community. When we did rental inspection in the beginning, we brought in people from all over the community, all walks of life, and people that had rental property and people who didn't have rental property. And it took us a year, and this was done in like 2 or 3 weeks. As I said, it was written by one person. But the thing that kicked it for me was before we voted. Now, I talked to the board before we voted, and I said, could we take some time on this and bring in people to make sure that this is what we want. We're taking something we've had and we're changing it just a little bit, putting your new name on it, but basically it's the same thing. I knew that no one was going to agree with me, and so then Tom Carpenter, the city attorney, who's been the city attorney for a long time, made a statement. He said, I want everyone to know I had nothing to do with this ordinance. I was not asked to work on this ordinance. This ordinance has been changed up to 15 minutes ago. Changes was being made on this ordinance. I want y'all to understand I had nothing to do with this. Now, when a person who you have trusted for 30-something years said, I haven't had anything to do with, to me that was a red flag. I had red flags because after looking at it, I knew it was so close to what the other was. And it was just a new name that is hot today in today's young people. It was put on it. That's why I voted no, because I really felt like we have an opportunity to make some changes to this besides just a name change, and that we have the city attorney that, in my opinion, should always look at something before we vote on it. When we vote on it, it's law, and I like to know that he has had a part in it. I think he said something about the fact that we have less people applying. Being on the Civil Service Commission, I received the paperwork from the Civil Service Commission. We had 270 people apply in this last class that we took, that's in class right now. Out of 270, how many people do you think we took?
I would love to know.
34 people. So I have started the process of saying, if 270 young people told mama and daddy and all their friends, I'm going to be a police officer, with all the excitement and everything, then after going through the steps, we only took 34, there is a problem in that math someplace. And I want to know what it is. I want to know how we had 34 people out of 270. I want to also look at the fire numbers and see if that is the same if we're having that large of a gap in it.
I am going to ask you the same question I asked Mr. Tierney about crime. You have been a city director for several, multiple decades, but recently we've had record high homicides, and then this year we have seen crime down across the board. So how do we continue to have decreased crime in the city if you are elected again?
Well, several ways. I attend all the quarterly meetings, and this week the quarterly meeting is at 12th Street. Next week it'll be at Northwest, and the next week it will be at Southwest. All the residents are invited to attend these meetings. They go over all the stats, you know, in your neighborhood, not your ward, but in your neighborhood, how much crime is going on, what kind of crime it is. The number one, when they get to car break-ins, they will show you on all the stats that our cars are breaking in because we're leaving valuable things in them. And police officers at every one of these locations will ask you to please lock your vehicle. Please make sure you take everything out. And it's just amazing how many guns they take out of a car sitting out in a yard. We need more officers. We have had a lot of officers quit. I think that Mr. Tierney mentioned the bonuses. Right now we are paying $10,000 for a person hired by the police department, and you get a $5,000 housing if you're moving to Little Rock. That's $15,000 that we're offering. And as he says, we train lots of them, and they move on to another town afterwards. Little Rock is a hard town because it's the capital city of Arkansas. We also get officers from other cities. The last time we had the civil service meeting, we got an officer from Jacksonville that came into Little Rock. So, of course, they're free to come and go. We just have to make sure that they're getting the best training and that we give them the best things, the best tools to do their jobs with. And when people, a couple of weeks ago, when crime was down, when crime was happening in Southwest and we had need for police officers, people started calling me saying, we're calling the police and they're not coming, what's the problem? I called over at the precinct and said, what's the problem? And I was told they had 18 officers, but only 18 officers, but only 9 police cars. And that doesn't work. You can't put 2 officers in a police car and be using all your officers. The following week I called 12th Street. They had 14 cars and about half, they had 14 police officers and about half enough cars. So we need cars very bad in the police department. We have not had a plan where every year we put money aside for replacement of vehicles. And that's something we're going to have to tackle with this budget set.
The last focus area I want to focus on is accessible housing. Now, according to our THV11 election survey, 88% of Arkansas voters say housing and costs associated with that are important to them. So Joan Adcock, Director Adcock, Little Rock implemented its first tenants' rights this year. We talked about this, you voted no. Well, how do we continue to have accessible housing and tenants' rights in Little Rock?
Well, now the tenants' rights have nothing to do with the housing.
I'm sorry.
This is what has to do with the housing. This one right here is 298 properties that we have demolished the houses on and left vacant weed lots. We continue to mow those vacant weed lots and say that it's for $200. Each one of these 298 is a possible lien that we could put on this property, take this and build a house on it. This one is 244. This one has the houses that are red tag falling down right now. These, in some cases, if we took these and put them in with a nonprofit, they could build those houses back up. These are the houses that we need to do for our lowest income people. But something that I found at a conference that I attended about 2 months ago is there's a new thing called workforce housing. And I went to look at that and everything. Benton, Bryant, Conway, all the small towns around us has it. And it is a housing for the school teacher who just got out of college, the police officer, the firefighter, the young professionals that want a house, but they can't afford $200,000 and $400,000 for one. So you have workforce housing, and we need to look at putting that type of housing in our city. so that we have it, because right now we do not have it. But on these, the majority of these are in Ward 1. I went to Valentine Street day before yesterday, and in 2 blocks areas, the majority of the properties are either vacant weed lots or houses that are in bad condition that need to be destroyed if we don't start some work on them. We need to look at housing as one of our main things, and it's all a game with money. Do you put money here? Do you put money in police and fire and garbage trucks? So that's what the budget is about. As we look at this budget, we'll decide what is the most important to the residents, to the board, and to our city. And so many times what we would love to put the money into, we can't put the money into because we need other things that are important to the citizens and residents. I think that we have enough churches. What if we gave each church a piece of property to build a house on for someone? But we have money in this city that I think if we show some of the people that we have a truly good project citywide, that we can get things done, turned around on the housing, and not have to take all the money out of the budget for other projects.
Mr. Tierney, the same question. What would your plan be for accessible housing and safe housing for people of Little Rock?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I want to say first that housing across the spectrum is important to accessibility and safety. And so it's incorrect to say that renters' rights doesn't have anything to do with accessible or safe housing. There's also other incorrect things that were incorrect about the renters' rights ordinance was different from the rental inspection ordinance from the 90s. It was different, and we talked about that. I shared what that was. So first off, we have to. So for me, working at our house, working with people that are unhoused, I saw firsthand the experience of what it's like to not have accessible housing and safe housing. I worked with kids, I worked with families that didn't have homes, that had to go to a shelter, or that were on the brink of losing their home for a number of reasons, financial especially. And those are kids that I still think about to this day. Some of them, the middle schoolers that I worked with, some of them have families now, and some of the kindergarten and second graders are now in high school, and they're going to graduate from high school, and that's really exciting. But we want to make sure that they have a place where they can go, they can get out of that cycle of poverty and homelessness. I've also worked closely with folks who, as I said, have been unhoused. For Mercy Community Church, there was a couple who got engaged at Mercy Community Church. They felt safe to do that there and welcome to do it. Fast forward to when I returned, and earlier this year, one of them died. They still were on the streets, and we're still facing a lack of safety in the city because they didn't have housing. And the partner that has survived is still on the streets. And it's unacceptable that we have that still happening in the city of Little Rock. So for me, to have accessible and safe housing approaches all parts of the housing spectrum, because for one, homelessness isn't that far away for a lot of us. And that's something that I hope that people are able to empathize with. A lot of people in our city, in our country, don't have 3 months worth of savings built up to be able to survive if they lose their job, if they get injured, if there's a fire that happens and they lose their home. And so we need to keep that in mind of how can we bridge the lack of finances in order for people to stay housed and stay housed safely. So on one hand, it's making sure that our shelters and our places that serve unhoused people are accessible. A lot of people with mobility issues are unable to get into shelters in Central Arkansas. This is a big topic that has come up this year and last year. So we need to make sure that they're accessible places for people. We need to make sure that we have different types of housing, and gratefully the city and the county are working towards that. County towards permanent supportive housing for folks that have mental health issues and that are really struggling to be able to continue on towards permanent housing on their own. We have transitional housing that is going to make sure that people get the skills and the employment that they need in order to have a solid foundation, a solid financial foundation so they can have housing of their own. We need to have rapid rehousing. We do have some of that in the city. I think we can work to improve upon that, which is when somebody loses their home, that means that they quickly get a type of shelter, some kind of housing that's going to make sure that they don't end up on the streets, or they don't have to go through that pain of not having a place to stay for them and their families. We can focus in on renters, making sure that we have safe places for them to live, like I've already mentioned, approaching and addressing the many properties in the city that are treating our residents poorly. It's also making sure that we bridge that financial gap for folks. We can do that. It takes some upfront investment, but do something that's like a 0% interest loan program that would allow folks to have rental assistance that they start to pay back. So it's a project that would allow people to bridge this cash flow, is often what it is, especially people that are on shift work. They may not get the number of shifts they need to make payments on the first of the month. But state law in Arkansas allows for that really aggressive response from landlords to say, well, you didn't pay, and so you don't get to stay here anymore. We can also bridge that part of the eviction process and do some mediation, making sure that there are resources in the city that mediate between landlords and tenants. And also, like, when we talk about rental assistance and mediation, these are things that benefit landlords too, because if landlords have a churn of people from their properties, they're also losing money. So it ends up benefiting them as well if we're able to bridge that financial gap and help make sure that people stay in their apartments, in their homes, wherever it is. Finally, it does have to do with the abandoned and vacant properties that we have in the city. I think it's great that there's ideas about working with nonprofits and working with ministries to roll this together. And like I said, I have that experience of collaborating. I have the experience of pulling groups together to have those big projects and do that kind of work. And I'm excited that that's an idea that people want to do. I'm sad that it hasn't happened yet. And I'm curious why it hasn't happened yet. Why hasn't there been that leadership to do that, especially from the groups that are addressing these issues? And then finally, we can help support home repairs, making sure we have some home repair services and programs in the city, but we can make sure that more people are able to access that. Because oftentimes those home repairs, especially for seniors who are just trying to stay in their home or to repair their home so it's adaptable as they have mobility issues or other things, we can make sure that people have the resources and they're connected to that to make those changes to their home so they can stay in it. Because my biggest thing is making sure that people get a home, keep their home, and make a place for other people to call home. That's how I address it. So I look at the whole spectrum, and like I said before, prevention is a huge part. Being proactive is a huge part of it. Making sure that we're, calling code to make sure that they address things, but also taking on leadership to do these kind of collaborations and programs, and to take the leadership on policy, making sure that people don't have to deal with those issues that have hurt too many people in our city.
We're going to move on to final remarks. I'm going to start with Mr. Tierney because we started with Director Adcock for opening remarks. So Mr. Tierney, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I do. The choice is clear in this election that we are at a point in our city that we need change. I ask people, I'm asking you all, what do you want to see in our city? What kind of city do you want? Do you want more of the same, whether there's stagnation, whether is things that are feeling stuck in our community, or do you want change, things that are data-informed, things that are collaborative, and to see that the city is actually effective, making sure that we are delivering on our promises to our residents. I have heard from so many people that have been hurt. They have testified before City Hall about whether it's the rental issues, whether it's loose dog issues, whether it's their business, struggling with their business, not being heard as a neighborhood association. I've been all around this city, going to neighborhood associations, parks, events, congregations, and I've been listening to people, and people are tired. They're tired of feeling like they can't get ahead, they can't get responses, and they don't feel heard by the people that are supposed to represent them. We see that when we talk about some of the parks, like Brody Creek Park or Tom Park or Otter Creek Park. These are places that I've visited and that they lack bathroom facilities, or they are lacking access to water, so that their fields are usable for soccer that happens out there. Which is a place for kids to go and have a place to engage and be active. These are places that don't have lights to make sure that they're safe for people, especially at night, to walk in. And that's a lack of leadership that we've seen in our city, not paying attention to what we need to be doing, not prioritizing these places, especially that have not had attention, that have not had services. And that's what I'm hearing from folks, and that's where I want to focus in on and that's what I want people to know, is that I've heard you. I've heard you, and I'm going to continue to hear you. I'm here to work for you, and I know for those who've met me, you know where my heart stands, and I hope that those who have not met me yet, you get the chance to really see that I am in this, and I'm going to continue to work for you when I'm elected. I'm going to go to your neighborhood associations. I'm going to go to your home and talk to you. I'm going to visit with you, and I'm going to not only be responsive to you to make sure the city addresses issues from a call to code enforcement or things, but I'm going to make sure that we have the initiative to start things so that you have access to the solutions yourself. You have the resources to solve it on your own, and I want to be a partner in that, but I'm not going to just do it on my own. I know I have other city directors, other city staff who are here to help and work together. I'm here to help lead that. And finally, that we have policies so that you don't have to deal with that in the future. That's the kind of leadership that I bring, where we're looking to the future, where we're looking at what do we need right now as a city so that we can grow our downtown, revitalize our neighborhood, fix that. So we can grow our downtown, which is the heart of our city, so we can revitalize our neighborhoods that are very much part of what we have as in our families and our lives that make up the city, so that we can jumpstart small businesses and address the issues that have affected small businesses for too long, and that we can make sure that every street is safe. That's what I bring, and I hope that you will believe in me and vote for me as your next at-large city director, position 10.
Director Adcock.
Yes. A lot of what he talks about can't be done because there's certain parameters that we have with the money that the city has. Lots of things you talk about cannot have city money being used for them. A lot of our home repairs that we do and everything is federal dollars. And the man that's does our federal department, he is fantastic in bringing all the federal dollars he can to our city. And I want that to continue because those federal dollars, we have more leeway of how we can spend them. But you just can't say we've got $1 million in the budget and let's go spend it. There's all kinds of laws and stuff. Not only laws, but there's all kinds of needs. You know, we have got to put public safety first, and that's what we have done. We have said the safety of our citizens and our residents is the most important thing to us. As I said, we're going to start looking at the budget. And if you've never looked at a $201 million budget, it's something that you have to give and take. You have to look at what is important, what is health, what is safety to the residents of this city. Reynolds rights that he's talking about so highly. We could take money out of police, we can take money out of garbage trucks, and we can put it into repairing some of the apartment complexes and everything. But then what about the police and what about the apartment complexes and everything? But lots of money is very guided to where it can be spent. You can't just say, I've got this money in the bank like we do with our personal money, let's just spend it. We have to look at the guidelines that we have to follow. We have to look at the things that are the most important and the most needed in this city. As I said, we have not for several years put money aside for replacement of vehicles. And we're seeing now what has happened with that. We can see that if we don't do those things that are public safety, if we put them off, we get the product that we have right now, and we can't do that. Yes, we all would like to have all of the nice and shiny things, but we have to understand that those needs that have to be met first. Just like your budget at home. You can't go have ice cream every meal. You've got other things you've got to buy. And with the city, you can't just buy the shiny things and everything. And when we do the budget, we all agree on what we want and what we need. And I invite everyone to watch. We'll start having the budget hearings, and you can see what has to be done first, and then we can take the others and do the things that we would all like to have. I have been a city director for 32 years. I have worked very hard. I have the endorsement of the Little Rock FOP, the endorsement of the Fire Union, and also of the Little Rock Realtors. I'm proud of my endorsements. I'm proud of my service to this city. And I would ask you to please vote for me for Little Rock City Director, position 10. Thank you.
You have one last thing you want to say?
Yeah, because there were things that Director Adcock said that were assuming that I didn't understand, so I want to address those. As somebody who has been in nonprofit and government, I know what it takes to run grants. I've done grant management. I've worked with I've worked with federal grants that come through state government. I've worked with private foundation grants. I know what it means to have to follow those rules, and I know that we have the flexibility to work with those spaces in order to be effective and make sure that they have the results that are delivered, or that we deliver results. It also means I'm not saying that we have to not follow the rules of federal grants to try to do the things I'm saying. I'm saying that we can be smart about seeking out other grants that we can do those projects. I'm saying that we need to do public-private partnerships in order to make sure that these things happen. I'm saying that we can be smart about being proactive and preventative so that these issues don't become issues in the first place. As the director said, like, we haven't had trash trucks we've had fleet issues. We've had trash trucks that have caught fire, that are not safe for people to operate, and that the city hasn't invested in those. That's been on Director Adcock's watch that has happened. And so, yes, like, we need to focus in on that and make sure that we make those hard decisions. But we have to be smart and think up front. And yes, looking at the budget and looking at having the information to make, data-informed decisions. And so it is very much something that we are able to do if we have the leadership that is willing to think creatively, think about smart, effective partnerships with the good-hearted people that are in our city that are trying to do the work to make sure that the city operates for themselves, their families, and their communities. We can be leaders as a city director. I can be a leader that makes sure we deliver on these issues, that we do focus in on public safety, that we do focus in on what needs to be done, and we look at the budget and see where there is waste. And there is waste that is happening in the city. There are people that don't trust that the city is going to deliver on what they say they're going to deliver on, and part of it is they don't feel like this money is being spent correctly. And so we need to take a really close look at that budget. And I have worked on budgets. And I've also worked with government agencies that have their myths around what they're allowed to do or what they're not allowed to do. That was a lot of my work in my last job was consulting for those governments and saying, hey, this is actually what you can do within the letter of the law, within the letter of the grant. And so that's what I would do, is really get in that fine-tooth comb and saying, what are we allowed to do? Where can we have flexibility? And then start doing that kind of work. I help people build new data systems. I help, such as what we see with our permit system with the city. I went through the process and I looked at it, and it is difficult for people to go through. From my personal experience, like trying to go through it, I was like, oh, this is difficult for people. But I've had the experience of working with a state agency to redo how they have their workforce registry system. And that translates into this, because I have the ability to look at the technological systems, our grants, our different departments, and really think about what do we need to do that is not only informed by data, but it's informed by the community, by people's experiences working with our government, with nonprofits, with businesses that are trying to get what they need. That's what I've done in my career, is I've listened to people and I've made recommendations and I've made changes. And I've seen that in my work with Coalition for Children's Mental Health, with United Way. I've seen that with my work with county and state government. We can do better as a city when we think really intentionally, when we take that fine-tooth comb and we have the leadership that is going to say, let's see what we can do here.
Director, I'm going to give you one last time to respond, and then we're
Okay,
going to
and
wrap
how
it up.
many years did you do all of this?
Yeah, I've had
How
over a
many
decade
years-
doing this.
How many years was you with state agencies, and how many years was you with nonprofits?
I've had over a decade of experience working
10
with
years?
I have over a decade of experience working with nonprofits and government. I've done city, county, and state government. And I have the experience that we need to make the city work for everyone. And it is something that, if we're going to compare time in office or time, I'm not even disagreeing with the time that Director Adcock has contributed to the city or contributed to nonprofit work and things like that. I'm not arguing with you on that. You do have that. But that doesn't mean that translates into what we need right now in the city. As I've said, there are votes that Director Adcock has made that do not match with what we need as a city. The ones that I've mentioned, but also we haven't had leadership on some of the big things that are really affecting our city. Whether it is our housing, whether it's loose dogs, there's a lot of things that we need leadership on. And like I said, I have over a decade doing this stuff. And that's what I'm going to give to the city, is the experience that translates into getting results.
Director Adcock, one more chance for final remarks, and then we're
Yes,
going to wrap up.
I've had 32 years in the city of Little Rock. I had 14 years running a nonprofit. I also you have found 4 votes that I voted no on that you object to, and I've had all these years of all the votes, so I would say that if you can only find 4 votes that you object to, that I have done a very good job, and I would like to be elected again to continue to serve people without voices and to look more into the housing problem, but of always remembering first that the citizens, residents come first. Public safety is what they tell us is the most important, and I will continue the way I've done for the last 32 years, serving the people of this great city.
Thank you so much for being here and your time.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Thank
Thank you.